Welcome back to Midnight Tales, where shadows dance and nightmares come alive. Tonight we're venturing deep into the woods of northern Maine, to a place where childhood innocence meets ancient terror. So dim the lights, grab your headphones, and prepare yourself for a story that will make you think twice about those summer camp memories. This is the story of Camp Whispering Pines and the children who never came home. Chapter 1. Arrival. The yellow school bus wheezed to a stop at the rusted gate, its brakes hissing like a dying animal. 16-year-old Maya pressed her face against the grimy window, watching as the camp counselor struggled with an ancient padlock. Camp Whispering Pines stretched before them, weathered cabins scattered among towering pine trees that seemed to lean inward as if listening to secrets. "This place gives me the creeps," whispered her bunkmate, Sarah, clutching her backpack tighter. Maya nodded, though she couldn't quite place why. Perhaps it was how the shadows fell wrong between the trees, or how the welcome sign hung at an odd angle, its cheerful yellow paint peeling like diseased skin. The other kids seemed to feel it too. Their excited chatter had died to nervous murmurs. Camp Director Hartwell boarded the bus, his smile too wide, his eyes too bright. "Welcome to Camp Whispering Pines, campers. We're going to have the most memorable summer of your lives." Something in his tone made Maya's stomach clench. Behind Hartwell stood 3 other counsellors, all wearing identical forced smiles. They moved with an odd synchronization, like marionettes controlled by the same puppet master. Chapter 2. The first night. The dining hall felt cavernous, its log walls adorned with decades of camp photos. Maya found herself studying the images as she picked at her dinner, curious how the smiles in the older photos seemed more genuine, while the recent ones looked increasingly strained. In the newest photo, dated just last summer, she could swear some of the children's eyes held a pleading quality. "Lights out in 10 minutes, announced Councillor Webb, her voice echoing strangely in the vast space. "Tomorrow we begin our special activities." That night, Maya lay awake in her narrow bunk, listening to the forest beyond the thin cabin walls. The wind moved through the pines with an almost musical quality, a low, haunting melody that seemed to carry words she couldn't quite understand. Sarah was already asleep, but Maya noticed that several other girls were also lying still, eyes wide open, listening. Around midnight, the whispering began. It started so softly that Maya thought it might be her imagination, but gradually it grew clearer. Children's voices speaking in unison from somewhere deep in the woods. The words were indistinct, but the tone was unmistakable. A chant, rhythmic and ancient. Maya slipped from her bunk and crept to the window. In the moonlight, she could see a procession of small figures moving between the trees. Children, walking in perfect single file toward the lake. Their movements were wrong somehow, too fluid, too synchronized, like sleepwalkers following a dream. She recognized some of them. Tommy from Cabin 4, Jessica from her arts and crafts group, kids who had been perfectly normal just yesterday. The chanting grew louder, and Maya felt a strange pull, an urge to join the procession. Her hand reached for the door handle before she caught herself, heart hammering. She stumbled back to her bunk and pulled the covers over her head, but the whispering continued until dawn. Chapter 3. The Disappearances. By the 3rd day, Maya realized that something was terribly wrong with Camp Whispering Pines. Children who joined the midnight processions returned different, their eyes vacant, their personalities muted. They followed the counsellor's instructions without question, smiled when told to smile, and spoke only when spoken to. It's like they're not really here anymore, Maya confided to Jake, one of the few kids who seemed unaffected. They were hiding behind the boathouse, watching as a group of changed children performed their daily activities with robotic precision. Jake nodded grimly. I've been asking around. This camp has been operating for 70 years, but there's no record of any alumni, no former campers posting on social media, no reunion events. It's like everyone who comes here just disappears. That afternoon, during what Director Hartwell called forest exploration time, Maya and Jake ventured deeper into the woods than they were supposed to. They were searching for answers, but what they found was far worse than they'd imagined. Hidden in a grove of ancient pines stood a circle of standing stones, each carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly. The ground within the circle was bare earth, packed hard by decades of foot traffic, and in the centre stood an altar, old beyond measure, stained dark with substances Maya didn't want to identify. "This is where they bring them," Jake whispered, his voice barely audible. "This is where they take the children." Around the stones, Maya could see dozens of small objects embedded in the earth. Toys, jewellery, pieces of clothing, belongings of children stretching back decades. Some of the items were so old they were barely recognisable, crumbling relics of summer camps from generations past. Chapter 4. The Truth Revealed. That night, Maya and Jake didn't return to their cabins. Instead, they hid in the woods, determined to witness what really happened during the midnight processions. They didn't have to wait long. At the stroke of 12, the counsellors emerged from their quarters, but these weren't the cheerful camp staff from the daytime. In the moonlight, their true forms were visible, gaunt, elongated figures with skin like bark and eyes that reflected light like an animal's. They moved through the camp with impossible grace, going from cabin to cabin, calling children forth with voices that weren't quite human. The affected children responded immediately, rising from their beds and walking outside in their pajamas. But tonight Maya watched in horror as several previously unaffected kids also joined the procession, their eyes suddenly blank and staring. Sarah was among them. The procession wound through the forest to the stone circle where Director Hartwell waited. In this place of ancient power, his human disguise had completely fallen away. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, his limbs twisted like gnarled branches, his face a hollow mask of bark and shadow. Children of the modern world, his voice rustled like wind through dead leaves. You have been chosen to join our eternal summer. Your joy, your innocence, your very essence will feed the old forest, as it has for decades before you. Maya watched in terror as the children formed a circle around the altar. They began to chant in a language that predated human civilization, their young voices weaving a spell that made the very air shimmer with dark energy. One by one, the children stepped forward to place their hands on the altar. As they did, Maya could see their life force flowing out of them like visible light, their faces growing pale and hollow. They weren't dying, something far worse was happening. They were being drained of everything that made them human, transformed into empty vessels for the forest's ancient hunger. Chapter 5. The Escape. Jake grabbed Maya's arm. "We have to get out of here, now." They ran through the dark forest, branches tearing at their clothes, the inhuman voices of the counsellors rising behind them in pursuit. The very trees seemed to be working against them, roots rising to trip them, branches reaching out like grasping fingers. Maya's lungs burned as they crashed through the underbrush. Behind them she could hear the counsellors spreading out, their calls echoing through the night like the cries of hunting wolves. But these weren't wolves, they were something far older and hungrier. "The main road," Jake gasped. "If we can reach the main road!" A figure stepped out from behind a massive pine, directly in front of them. Councillor Webb, her human disguise completely abandoned, stood blocking their path. Her mouth opened impossibly wide, revealing rows of thorn-sharp teeth. "Running spoils the harvest," she hissed. "Fear makes the essence bitter." Maya and Jake split up, diving in opposite directions. Maya rolled behind a fallen log, heart pounding so hard she was sure it would give her away. She could hear Jake crashing through the brush somewhere to her left, and the horrible scratching sound of the creature that had been Councillor Webb pursuing him. Fighting every instinct telling her to help her friend, Maya forced herself to stay hidden. She had to survive. She had to get help. She had to warn someone about what was happening at Camp Whispering Pines. Jake's screams echoed through the forest, then suddenly cut off. Maya squeezed her eyes shut, tears streaming down her face. When she opened them again, dawn was breaking through the canopy, and the forest had fallen silent. Chapter 6. The Warning. Maya never found out what happened to Jake. She stumbled onto the main road 3 miles from camp, where a passing truck driver found her, babbling about monsters and missing children. The police investigated, of course, but when they arrived at Camp Whispering Pines, they found only empty cabins and no sign that anyone had been there for years. The official report stated that Maya had suffered a psychotic break brought on by stress and isolation. The camp, they claimed, had been closed for a decade. There were no other children, no counsellors, no evidence that the place had operated recently at all. But Maya knew the truth. She knew that somewhere in those dark woods the ancient hunger still waited. She knew that the thing calling itself Director Hartwell would eventually find a new location, a new group of unsuspecting parents looking for the perfect summer camp experience for their children. And she knew that every summer, when the nights grew warm and the pine trees whispered their ancient songs, the harvest would continue. And there you have it. The tale of Camp Whispering Pines. Maya tried for years to warn people, to find evidence of what she'd witnessed, but the forest keeps its secrets well. Some say she's still searching, still trying to save children from that eternal summer. The next time you see an advertisement for a remote summer camp, one that promises an unforgettable experience deep in the woods, you might want to ask yourself, what happened to last year's campers? And why are there no reviews from parents online? Sweet dreams, and remember, if you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe for more Midnight Tales, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a nightmare. Until next time, keep your lights on and stay away from the whispering trees.